Hello, class. We have now reached chapter 2 of the book of Daniel. It's a long chapter, so bear with me. Let's go. Let's read the first 6 verses. Now, in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. Then the king gave orders to call in the magicians, the conjurers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king. The king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is anxious to understand the dream. Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell the dream to your servants, and we will declare the interpretation. The king replied to the Chaldeans, The command from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you will be torn limb from limb, and your houses will be made a rubbish heap. But if you declare the dream and its interpretation, you will receive from me gifts and a reward and great honor. Therefore, declare to me the dream and its interpretation. In 603 BC, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that disturbed him so much that he could not continue to sleep. He called in all classes of his wise men to deal with his dream. Up to this point, the wise men had an easy job with regard to royal dreams. They could give any interpretation that sounded reasonable once the king had related the content of the dream. Therefore, they asked the king to relate the content to them. However, this time, Nebuchadnezzar decided to test his wise men. He demanded that they not only interpret the dream, but also tell him its content. The king commanded severe judgment if they failed. Their bodies were to be torn apart limb from limb, and their houses were to be made into public restrooms. On the other hand, the wise men were to be rewarded greatly if they met the king's demand. And let's read verses 7 through 13. They answered a second time and said, Let the king tell the dream to his servants, and we will declare the interpretation. The king replied, I know for certain that you are bargaining for time, inasmuch as you have seen that the command from me is firm, that if you do not make the dream known to me, there is only one decree for you have agreed together to speak lying and corrupt words before me until the situation is changed. Therefore, tell me the dream, that I may know that you can declare to me its interpretation. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, There is not a man on earth who could declare the matter for the king, inasmuch as no great king or ruler has ever asked anything like this of any magician, conjurer, or Chaldean. Moreover, the thing which the king demands is difficult, and there is no one else who could declare it to the king except God's, whose dwelling place is not with mortal flesh. Because of this, the king became indignant and very furious, and gave orders to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they looked for Daniel and his friends to kill them. The wise men knew that they could not fulfill the king's demand. In order to postpone their impending deaths, they pretended that they had not heard the king's requirement. They asked the king a second time to relate the dream. Nebuchadnezzar, recognizing that their delay tactic, became more emphatic in his demand. The elite Chaldeans told the king that he was unreasonable. No great ruler had ever made such a demand, they said. He was requiring something that was humanly impossible. Only the gods could do what he wanted. These insults from the very class of wise men to which the king himself belonged were more than Nebuchadnezzar could tolerate. In a fit of rage, he ordered all the wise men of Babylon to be killed. Although Daniel and his friends were not present in this session, they were to be executed too. Once again, God was presented with a fine opportunity to intervene and display his sovereignty. And that brings us to verses 14 through 24. Then Daniel replied with discretion and discernment to Arioch, the captain of the king's bodyguard, who had gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. And he said to Arioch, the king's commander, "For what reason is the decree from the king so urgent?" Then Arioch informed Daniel about the matter. So Daniel went in and requested of the king that he would give him time in order that he might declare the interpretation to the king. Then Daniel went to his house and informed his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, about the matter, so that they might request compassion from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his friends would not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel said, "Let the name of God be blessed forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him. It is he who changes the times and the epochs. He removes kings and establishes kings. He gives wisdom to wise men and knowledge to men of understanding. It is he who reveals the profound and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and power. Even now you have made known to me what we requested of you, for you have made known to us the king's matter." Therefore Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and spoke to him as follows: "Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me into the king's presence, and I will declare the interpretation to the king." When Daniel heard about the king's order against the wise men, he requested that the king grant him a certain amount of time. Daniel promised to return to fulfill this king's demand. This was another step of faith. Daniel was trusting God to reveal the content and interpretation of the king's dream. Having been granted the time requested, Daniel rushed home and reported the situation to his friends. Together, they had an emergency prayer meeting. They petitioned Jehovah to reveal the necessary information to them. God answered their prayer by revealing the matter to Daniel. Daniel responded with a great prayer of thanksgiving. In this prayer, Daniel emphasized the wisdom, power, and sovereignty of God. Now Daniel had the necessary information. He requested to be brought before the king to fulfill Nebuchadnezzar's demand. By the grace of Jehovah, the lives of the wise men would be spared. This brings us to verse 25 through 30. Then Arioch hurriedly brought Daniel into the king's presence and spoke to him as follows: "I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can make the interpretation known to the king." The king said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, "Are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation?" Daniel answered before the king and said, "As for the mystery about which the king has inquired, neither wise men, conjurers, magicians, nor diviners are able to declare it to the king. However, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will take place in the latter days. This was your dream and the visions in your mind while on your bed. As for you, O king, while on your bed your thoughts turn to what would take place in the future. And he who reveals mysteries has made known to you what will take place. But as for me, this mystery has not been revealed to me for any wisdom residing in me more than in any other living man, but for the purpose of making the interpretation known to the king, and that you may understand the thoughts of your mind." Receiving from God the knowledge of the dream and its interpretation, Daniel went to Arioch, the king's executioner, informed him that he was ready to interpret the king's dream. Arioch took Daniel at once to the king and claimed credit for having found an interpreter. Actually, it was Daniel who went to Arioch. The king required whether Daniel was able to tell him what he had dreamed and then to interpret it. Daniel asserted what the wise men of Babylon could not do, because there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. Daniel took no credit for himself. Daniel asserted that at the outset that the king's dream was prophetic. It covered the panorama of Gentile history from Nebuchadnezzar's time till the forthcoming subjugation of Gentile powers to Israel's Messiah. This time period is called the times of the Gentiles. Again, Daniel affirmed that the mystery was not revealed to him because he was wiser than others. We see the content of the dream in verses 31 through 35. You, O king, were looking, and behold, there was a single great statue. That statue, which was large and of extraordinary splendor, was standing in front of you, and its appearance was awesome. The head of that statue was made of fine gold, its breast and its arms of silver, its belly and thighs are bronze, its legs iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You continued looking until a stone was cut out without hands, and it struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and crushed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed all at the same time and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away so that not a trace of them was found. But the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Daniel reported that Nebuchadnezzar had seen an enormously large statue in his dream. The statue was dazzling because of the metals of which it was made. The head was fashioned of pure gold, the chest and arms of silver, the belly and thighs of bronze. The legs were of iron, with its feet partly iron and partly baked clay. The statue was not permanent. It was struck on the feet by a rock cut not by human hands, which reduced the whole statue like chaff that was blown away. The rock that destroyed the statue grew into a huge mountain that filled the whole earth. The dream was simple. It was the meaning of the dream that agitated the king. Verse 36 through 38, the interpretation. This was the dream. Now we will tell its interpretation before the king. You, O king, are the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the strength, and the glory. And wherever the sons of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, or the birds of the sky, he has given them into your hand, and has caused you to rule over them all. You are the head of gold. Daniel's interpretation made it clear. The image revealed the course of Gentile kingdoms, which in turn would rule over the land of Palestine and the people of Israel. Nebuchadnezzar, head of the Babylonian Empire, was represented by the head of gold. He had received his dominion and power from God, who sets up kings and deposes them as well. His rule was viewed as a worldwide empire in which he ruled over all mankind as well as beasts and birds. Here, Nebuchadnezzar, by divine appointment, was helping fulfill what God had planned for man. Verse 39, after you, there will arise another kingdom inferior to you, then another third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over the earth. The second portion of the statue, the chest and arms of silver, represented the rise of the Medes and Persians. The Medo-Persians conquered in 539 the Babylonians. The armors of silver evidently represented the two nations of Media and Persia that together defeated Babylon. The kingdom of the Medes and Persians was inferior to the Babylonian kingdom, as silver is to gold. The belly of thighs of bronze represented the third kingdom to arise. This was the Grecian Empire. Alexander the Great conquered the Medes and the Persians between 334 and 330 BC and assumed authority over its peoples and territory. By his conquest, he extended the Greek Empire as far east as the northwestern portion of India, an extensive empire that seemingly was over the whole earth. And the fourth kingdom. Verse 40, then there will be a fourth kingdom as strong as iron. Inasmuch as iron crushes and shatters all things, so like iron that breaks in pieces, it will crush and break all these in pieces. The legs of iron represents the Roman Empire. The fourth kingdom conquered the Greek Empire in 63 BC. Though the Roman Empire was divided into two legs and culminated in a mixture of iron and clay, it was one empire. This empire was characterized by strength, as iron is stronger than bronze, silver, and gold. The Roman Empire was stronger than the previous empires. It crushed all the empires that had preceded it. In its cruel conquest, Rome swallowed up the lands and peoples that had been parts of the three previous empires and assimilated those lands and people into itself. Now we come to the interpretation of the feet and toes mixed with clay. Verse 41, 42, and 43. In that you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it will be a divided kingdom, but it will have in it the toughness of iron, inasmuch as you saw the iron mixed with common clay. As the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of pottery, so some of the kingdom will be strong and part of it will be brittle. And in that you saw the iron mixed with common clay, they will combine with one another in the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, even as iron does not combine with pottery. The empire that began as iron regressed to a state of clay mixed with iron. This weakness speaks of progressive weakness and deterioration, since iron and clay cannot be mixed. The Roman Empire was characterized by division and deterioration. Though Rome succeeded in conquering the territories that came under its influence, it could never unite the peoples to form a united empire. In that sense, the people were a mixture of and were not united. Other views of this mixture of strength and weaknesses have also been suggested by other scholars. And then the overthrow of kingdoms. We see in verse 44 and 45. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed, and that kingdom will not be left for another people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it will itself endure forever. Inasmuch as you saw that a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and gold, the great God has made known to the king what will take place in the future. So the dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. Nebuchadnezzar had seen a rock hit and smash the image. The statue was destroyed by the rock, not by human hands. Thus God will one day invest political power in a king who will rule over the earth, subduing it to his authority, thus culminating the time of the Gentiles. In Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the smiting rock became a mountain that filled the whole earth. In Scripture, a mountain is often a symbol for a kingdom. So Daniel explained that the four empires which would rule over the land and the people of Israel would not be destroyed by human means, but rather by the coming of the Messiah, the striking stone. When he comes, he will establish the messianic kingdom promised to Israel. At his return, he will subjugate all kingdoms to himself, thus bringing them to an end. And we know that from the book of Revelation, chapter 11 and 19. We see in verses 46 through 49, that Daniel is honored because God gave him the dream and its interpretation. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face and did homage to Daniel and gave orders to present to him an offering and fragrant incense. The king answered Daniel and said, "Surely your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, since you have been able to reveal this mystery." Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. And Daniel made request of the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the administration of the province of Babylon, while Daniel was at the king's court. The king was so moved at Daniel's interpretation that he prostrated himself before Daniel and ordered an offering be made to Daniel, an honor that would normally have been given only to the gods of Babylon, their idols. Nebuchadnezzar was led to confess that Daniel's God is superior to all the gods of Babylon and that he is Lord over the earth's kings. Then the king promoted Daniel to a position of responsibility in the government and rewarded him materially with many gifts. Daniel's 3 friends were also promoted and made administrators to serve Daniel in the same province. And this